The most intimate act between two people has almost nothing to do with the physical. Most people think they understand what this act is about. They reduce it to biology, to pleasure mechanics, to something physical that either happens in a relationship or doesn't. But what's actually happening underneath the surface at the level where psychology and emotion and deep human need all converge is something far more profound than most people ever stop to examine. This act, when it happens between two people who are genuinely connected, is one of the most psychologically complex expressions of trust, care, and desire that exists between human beings. And understanding why changes everything about how both people experience it. Today, we go there, honestly, deeply, and with the respect this conversation deserves. Nobody ever taught you what intimacy actually means at its deepest level. Here's where so many people find themselves in relationships that are physically present, but emotionally incomplete. Where the physical acts happen, but the depth beneath them is never fully explored or understood. Maybe you've been in a relationship where this particular intimacy felt disconnected from real emotion, where it was mechanical rather than meaningful, where something about it never quite felt like the profound act it has the potential to be. Or maybe you're on the other side wondering what it means when a partner genuinely wants this, whether it's purely physical, whether it means something deeper, whether you should read anything into the quality of emotion behind it. The truth is that most people, men and women both, have never had an honest, psychologically grounded conversation about what this act actually represents, about why certain men genuinely love it, not just tolerate it, about what it communicates at a level words rarely reach, about what it does to the emotional bond between two people when it's done with genuine care and presence. That conversation ends the confusion. And today, we have it. It begins with understanding what vulnerability actually requires to understand why this act is so psychologically significant. You first have to understand what it demands from both people involved. For her, this act requires a level of physical and emotional vulnerability that is among the most profound she can offer another person. It requires complete surrender of self-consciousness, complete trust in the person she's with. Complete willingness to be seen not in the curated, managed way people present themselves to the world, but in the most unguarded, uncontrolled, completely authentic state a human body can occupy. That's not a small thing. For a woman who carries any history of self-consciousness about her body, and most women carry significant amounts of that history, given the world they've grown up in, offering this level of vulnerability is an act of extraordinary courage. And for a man who genuinely loves this act, what he is responding to, whether he could articulate it or not, is exactly that. He is responding to the gift of being trusted with someone's most unguarded self. And something in that trust calls forward the best, most caring, most genuinely present version of him. Why genuine desire for this act signals something important about a man. Here's a psychological truth that most people have never heard stated plainly. A man who genuinely loves this act, who doesn't just perform it as a prerequisite or a transaction, but who is authentically drawn to it, is almost always a man who is genuinely oriented toward her pleasure as something that matters in its own right, not as a means to an end, not as a technique to create reciprocity, as something that is intrinsically valuable and worth being present for. This orientation toward her experience as something that genuinely matters is one of the most reliable psychological indicators of a partner who will show up fully in the emotional dimensions of a relationship as well. Because the same quality that makes a man genuinely invested in her physical experience is the same quality that makes him genuinely invested in her emotional experience. The capacity to care about someone else's inner state as deeply as his own. When a man is fully present in this act, not going through motions, but genuinely engaged, he is demonstrating a quality of care that she will feel in her nervous system before she can name it in her. 9.3, the psychology of wanting to give pleasure. There's a dimension of this that men themselves often don't fully examine, which is why exploring it here matters. When a man is genuinely drawn to this act, Part of what he's experiencing is the profound satisfaction of being directly responsible for her pleasure, not adjacent to it, not contributing to it. Directly, solely, completely responsible for it. That experience of being the singular source of someone's pleasure in a moment where nothing else exists for her connects to something deep in masculine psychology around purpose and impact, around being the one who matters in a specific, tangible, undeniable way. This is not ego. Or rather, it's not only ego, it's the genuine, deeply human desire to matter to another person, to be needed, to be the specific person whose presence creates something they couldn't create alone. In this act, that desire finds perhaps its most direct and unambiguous expression. He matters. It's completely in that moment. And for a man who genuinely loves this, that mattering is a significant part of what draws him back to it. What it does to the emotional bond, the science underneath the feeling. Let's talk about what actually happens neurologically when this level of intimate connection occurs. When a woman experiences genuine pleasure, real, uninhibited, fully felt, her brain releases a cascade of bonding neurochemicals. Oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin, the neurological. But architecture of deep attachment activates in response to this specific combination of safety, pleasure, and presence. And here's what matters. The person who provided that experience becomes neurologically associated with all of those feelings. Her nervous system begins to link his presence, his specific, particular presence, with the felt experience of being cared for, seen, and completely safe. This is why this act, when it's genuine rather than perfunctory, creates a quality of bond that other forms of intimacy can take much longer to build, because it operates at a level below conscious thought. It speaks directly to the parts of the nervous system that govern attachment, trust, and the fundamental human need to feel safe enough to be completely oneself. The role of emotional safety in whether this act is transformative or empty here is the most important distinction in this entire conversation, and the one most frequently overlooked. This act can be technically identical, but in two different relationships and be experienced as profoundly different. In one relationship, it's a depth charge, something that creates resonance that lasts for days. In another, it's hollow, going through the motions of intimacy without the substance of it. The difference is not technique. The difference is not duration or skill. The difference is emotional safety. When she feels completely safe, not just physically, but emotionally, her nervous system releases into the experience in a way that transforms it. She stops monitoring. She stops managing. She stops being a partially external observer of her own experience. She simply is in the moment, fully, completely, without reservation. That level of release is only available in the presence of someone she trusts completely, someone whose motives she doesn't have to question. Someone who has demonstrated across the full architecture of their relationship that her experience matters to him more than his performance does. But emotional safety is the prerequisite. Everything else is details. 6. Why this act is an act of worship in its highest form. This might be the most important reframe in this entire video, and it's one that changes how both people experience this kind of intimacy. When a man approaches this act with genuine presence and genuine care, when he is not thinking about himself at all, when his entire attention is directed toward her experience, when the act becomes a form of complete devotion to well-being, it ceases to be merely sexual. It becomes something closer to sacred. In many ancient cultures and traditions, female sexuality was not something separate from the spiritual. It was considered a direct expression of it. The act of honoring a woman's body with your full, undivided, caring attention was understood as an act of reverence, not toward an abstraction, toward the specific, particular, irreplaceable human being in front of you. A man who approaches intimacy, who brings to this act the quality of attention he would bring to something he genuinely reveres, gives a woman an experience of being valued that goes much deeper than physical pleasure. He gives her the experience of being honored. And that experience of being honored in the most intimate possible context is one that stays in the body long after the moment itself has passed. 7. What holds men back and why those barriers are worth examining. Some men are not naturally drawn to this act. Or they're drawn to it in theory, but find themselves less present in practice than they want to be. And understanding why is worth spending a moment on honestly. The most common barrier is self-consciousness, specifically a preoccupation with how they're doing rather than how she's feeling. The internal commentary running on performance rather than presence. The monitoring of technique when the most important thing is simply being there completely without evaluation. The second barrier is disconnection from her pleasure as something that genuinely matters. When intimacy becomes transactional, a step in a sequence rather than a destination in itself, the quality of presence required for this act to be genuine becomes difficult to access. And the third barrier, perhaps the most honest one, is vulnerability. Because being this close to another person in this posture with this specific quality of attention requires a man to be genuinely exposed to. Not physically, but emotionally. To be this present with another person's experience requires dropping the armor. And for men who were never taught that dropping armor is strength rather than weakness, that can be genuinely difficult. The path through all of these barriers is the same: presence. Return to her. Return to the specific human being in front of you. Let her experience be your entire world for that duration. And everything else takes care of itself. 8. What she feels when it's genuine and why she. But never forgets it. Let's end with the truth that matters most from her side. When this act is genuinely given, when the man who is with her is completely present, completely oriented toward her, completely uninterested in anything except her experience, she feels something that most women struggle to fully describe but recognize immediately when it arrives. She feels chosen. Not because she's the most convenient option. Not because desire overcame consideration, but because someone looked at all of her body, her vulnerability, her surrender, and responded with care rather than taking. She feels precious in the oldest, truest sense of that word, like something of real value being held carefully by someone who understands its worth. And she feels, maybe for the first time in a long time, completely free to be exactly who and what she is without managing a single thing about it. That freedom, genuine, felt, given by another person's complete acceptance, is one of the most profound gifts one human being can offer another. And the man who gives it becomes, in her experience, something she carries with her. Not as memory, as feeling. As a body knowledge of what it felt like to be completely, unconditionally received. The most intimate moments between two people are not defined by what happens. They're defined by who is actually there while it's happening. Full presence, genuine care, complete orientation toward her experience, the willingness to be close enough to another person that nothing exists except the two of you and the trust between you. That is what transforms this act from something physical into something that changes both people. Not technique, not duration, not any of the things that most conversations about this topic focus on. Presence, honesty, care. Those three things brought fully to this specific act create something that neither person forgets, and they create it not because of what happened, but because of how genuinely, how reverently one person showed up for another. That's the whole thing. And now you understand why. If this conversation gave you a framework for something you felt but never had words for, subscribe. Every week on this channel, we explore the deep psychology of human intimacy, connection, and what it truly means to be close to another person in a way that matters. Real conversations, honest ones, the kind that actually